Okay, here we are again. It's the middle of the week, the first week in September. Webster Tarpley is up this first hour. Webster, of course, is one of the most extraordinary historians working on this planet in the media, or out of the media for that matter. I think he is, in some ways, our greatest living historian. He hasn't written volumes and volumes of books, but his understanding of what happened in the past and how it directly relates to what's happening now is breathtaking. It's extraordinary. And I remember as a young, well, I was in high school, I guess, my father wrote a book. He was a writer, a journalist, very talented, very humble, but very talented man. He wrote a book on World War One, and I said, Dad, why World War One? Why not World War Two? It's more relevant. He said, oh, no, no, you don't understand. It all goes back to World War One and before. And what I've written is the first volume. He was going to write a second one about World War II to bring it forward. He knew where this was all going a long time ago. And I suspect Webster did too. I think we all, though, however, are a little bit surprised at the extraordinary speed with which it has all come to pass. Webster, welcome back.
Thank you, Jeff. Let me just point out that I have written about half a dozen books. So
oh, yeah.
Maybe that's not, it's not as much as some, but...
no, they're very
anyway,
important.
I invite people to take a look. You can find it at tarpley.net.
Yeah. No, they're more contemporary in many ways than your knowledge. Your knowledge is so deep. I don't know.
But I've also got that collection of essays, which is on the on my website, the Against Oligarchy, and that's the one that takes you back to Diocletian.
Ah, very good. Okay, I forgot about that. Yep.
Well, it also does the story of the Reformation and the wars of religion in Europe and so forth.
Yeah.
And I would actually invite people to take a look at my website, because tonight I have to talk about things that might make it good if you had a map in front of you, or you'd get more out of it. And if you want to see a map, I've put up a couple of maps, which you can find at tarpley.net, and they're sort of the top story. So if you want to follow along in a couple of minutes, maybe we do that, because it makes a very interesting comparison, and it's what I would count as some kind of a discovery of my own made here in the last couple of weeks, comparing the American Civil War and the beginning of the First World War. But first of all,
a quick question: how's my distant cousin Renzi doing in Rome?
Well, he of course is he's anybody's guess still, and there are many elements that are not so encouraging, but there is hope. And the one thing that gives us hope is this report that we've gotten a couple of times now, that the Russians are working on Renzi. And it means, of course, that the reason the Anglo-Americans wanted to get Berlusconi out at all costs was that Berlusconi was a close personal friend of Putin, and Italy was acting as an advocate, much more than Germany, much more than stupid Merkel. He was acting as an advocate for Russia inside the European Union, and it would have been very hard to have the current hysterical crisis if Berlusconi had still been there, because he would always say no, right, when they said, you need a tremendous austerity program, and the answer from him was no. So they organized the coup d'etat. That's the coup d'etat of November 2011 that brought in a complete puppet of the International Monetary Fund and Goldman Sachs, this guy by the name of Monti, M-O-N-T-I. But now we've got Renzi, who has a certain amount of popular support, right? Got 41% in the European elections, so that's pretty good. And he has now just chosen the foreign policy chief of the European Union. And you remember this was this awful British woman, this embodiment of the dumb cow, right? Baroness Ashton, who was a complete, cold warrior, warmonger, and contemptible person at the same time. Now we have this interesting lady, Mogherini, and Mogherini has been the Italian foreign minister. So she's Federica Mogherini, and she's now the foreign policy boss of the European Union. And the way this happened in that European Union meeting on Saturday was that all of these, virulently Russophobic Eastern European demagogue regimes, right, where these people can't deliver the goods, they can't deliver full employment, rising standards of living, decent wages, anything like that, full employment. No, they can't do that. So they deliver anti-Russian hysteria, right? And this is Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, where Barkey has been until just a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah.
And then Poland, of course.
Yeah.
Hungary escapes in a certain interesting way, but there are others, right? Romania and Bulgaria, I'm afraid, are not going very well.
This Webster, this anti-Russian war drum beating is obscenely transparent. I'm really shocked that the controlled media gets away with it as much as it does. It's really
Jeff. I would urge you. You have a soapbox of some dimensions. You better get a parade of people on there who are warning against the horrors of war. Right? You can get people on there who could talk about what a Topol-M intercontinental ballistic missile looks like when it explodes, why you don't want to be near that, right? What the stakes are, what demagogues. We've got this Petro Poroshenko.
Well, I call him
Poroshenko, Jeff. Poroshenko.
Good.
We call him Poroshenko because his policies are obscene. He's the Ukrainian demagogue president.
He's despicable. Well, we call him. I call him Porky here. Porky and his pigs.
Petro. Petro, because maybe they think he's got oil, so he'd become a
God
Petro.
only knows.
Regime.
He's got chocolate. We know that. Look, this whole thing of.
But maybe that's connected to the oil, right? Maybe the chocolate, they've invented chocolate that doesn't come from
God
milk.
Only knows.
Some other dark substance.
They're
like
stashing,
oil.
Gas. Europe is stashing gas. Now Porky is talking about cutting the power down to Crimea this month. So this guy, he sat on a broomstick or something because he's got a problem. His mouth does not stop running.
That cannot, they're going to deliver genocidal austerity as demanded by the International Monetary Fund.
That's the
this is
game.
What these poor dupes, the Maidan dupe collection, got out there saying, we want to join Europe. Well, you want to join Europe, they will treat you like Greece.
We want to join penury.
Greece. You're going to be put through the ringer, right? You're going to have your unions will be smashed, your social safety net will be shredded, workers' rights gone, foreigners buy the Black Earth region, the pipeline distribution system will be taken by foreigners, the coal and iron ore of the Donbass and Krivoy Rog, all of that will be looted, and you'll be left with nothing but your eyes to cry with. That's what it means to join Europe in the age of the Troika, right? You're dealing with the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, right?
Here's a real weird, obtuse angle to this thing that nobody talks about. Not that it's a big secret, but no one talks about it. The Russians have had for, I guess, 20 years now, the most awesome intercontinental ballistic missile of them all. It's called the Satan. It's huge. The top stage is full of warheads. It's about as big as a medium-sized school bus. And they have them staged, I don't know how many, but they have some of them staged in the Ukraine. In Ukraine, the workers in Ukraine who take care of these missiles have promised Russia that they will continue to service them and keep them ready. This is a weird thing. So you've got thermonuclear Russian ICBMs in Porky's Ukraine. So figure that one out, folks.
The idea that Ukraine could be an independent country was, of course, absurd from the word go. And what you see, they can't maintain their balance of payments because they're so dependent on this Russian gas. When this was one country, this whole issue of the balance of payments did not arise. But since they've insisted on this
there's $7 billion behind in their gas payments
of the former Soviet Union, it's just not viable. And it never will be. And there's nothing that can be done about that. And it's a fictitious synthetic country. Never existed on the map before 1918, and it's a creation of the German General Staff under Ludendorff, who's also the guy who invented Hitler. So Ludendorff invented Hitler, he invented Ukraine, and so forth. So it's out of the same think tank.
Well, that's the way it was back then.
And I think it's time for people in this country to start saying, look, we have no stake in this. We have no alliance with these people. We do not want an alliance. Think of the one-sided nature of this Yatsenyuk. He says, now Ukraine wants to join NATO. Well, what's in it for us here in the U.S., so to speak, right? In other words, the Ukrainians come on the scene and they say, you've got to support us because we're for democracy. And apparently the price of this is a likely general war, quite possibly a nuclear war. So what insane calculation could ever bring the United States to say, yes, we'll guarantee you? And, of course, it's all completely one-sided, right? The United States derives no benefit, nothing conceivably worth it, and the downside is infinite, right? The upside is non-existent, and the downside is infinite. Who in his right mind would want to do this?
Oh, I agree. Now,
and this, of course, goes for Georgia. It goes for Moldova, and these other places, and even these Baltic republics. Again, this is the land of the demagogues. This is where Russophobia is the stock in trade of the ruling parties. They have very large, 25% Russian minorities whom they mistreat, and that's part of their political game, right? That they constantly provoke tensions with this very large Russian minority, and one of these days that's going to boil over too. So I think this a couple of people in particular this past week have been especially impudent, right? Willing to fight to the last American is the way I always like to put it.
That's
right?
the truth.
They're going to be so courageous because they know that the U.S. is going to take it on the chin.
We'll be right behind you. Yeah.
Right, we'll be right behind you. So this is this woman, Grybauskaitė. This is this hag, Haradan leader of Lithuania, this blonde woman she was mouthing off, we're already at war with Russia. This is war already. War.
Another bright
and
light.
Then the Polish president, Komorowski, made this statement that the Russians want Cossack Europe dominated by the Cossacks, I suppose, the cavalry. And then he got into this, he switched from that one to the idea of not appeasing Hitler again. And I have to point out, the first country to sign a friendship accord with Hitler was Poland, under Marshal Pilsudski, who had some good qualities, but nevertheless he did this. The Polish-Hitler Friendship Treaty of 1934 was the first one, and when Hitler went after Czechoslovakia and carved it, Poland was right there to grab a piece, as was Hungary, as were others, right? So, and then we find out from this posturing prime minister of Poland, right, Tusk, T-U-S-K.
The Tusk
He's
man.
now become the president.
Yeah.
He's replaced Van Rompuy. Rompuy, the broken man, right, of Europe, the president of the European Commission. He's out, or will be out, and then in comes this Tusk.
Yeah.
And it turns out that Tusk's grandfather was a Nazi. And there are pictures of him with his swastika uniform and all of his Nazi regalia. And this guy is now giving the world lectures about democracy and freedom and don't have
it's unbelievable.
And so forth. And it's all based on the idea that the poor American schmucks and slobs will pay with their lives, and these demagogues can prance around and talk about their wonderful service to democracy and freedom and international law. Don't forget that. So
it's true. All right, we got this quack regime in Kiev. We've got obvious Russian involvement with the partisans and the resistance in the east. There are ultimatums being thrown back and forth at lower and mid levels. I don't know where this is going to go, but it's not pretty. There was a video I got 2 days ago which appeared to show the sinking of two ships. Did you see that video?
Well, there were a couple of Ukrainian Coast Guard ships that got tagged by these the pro-Russian party. They're moving along the northern coast.
Well, somebody was flying jets. This was done by jets. You could see the jets. You could see the flyover, the reconnaissance. They swung around, did a clockwise loop, counterclockwise loop, and then one flew right over the second ship, and kaboom! It's right there on video. I've got it if you want to see it.
Possible, quite possible. I don't know. The account I saw was that there'd been some land-based
Well,
artillery.
they claimed it was
firing
artillery,
at
but no, these were jets. You could hear them. There were two